Tyler, we had this gentleman on the podcast. It was like
COVID or
pre-COVID or COVID. I always try to remember where I was sitting in my chair because COVID, I definitely was at home. But
yeah.
a long time ago, and he was actually up in Maine, in a different position for a builder, and has now relocated to not Greenwich, but works in Greenwich, and
Connecticut.
Connecticut. And a few episodes ago, or no, not a few episodes ago, a few weeks ago, you thought he had lived in Greenwich, but we'll get to that. Mr. Ben Bogie.
Yeah, that was exciting. I feel like the first hour we could have just sat there and listened to him speak. Super knowledgeable, has a ton of insight, really devotes a lot of time to the industry. And it's really cool to see him getting acknowledged for that and the business that he's in and a partial owner of, which is a neat setup that they have. So listen to that as well.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see where things have gone for him. So if you don't follow him, definitely do. Huge building science guy and always just putting out really valuable, knowledgeable, accurate content out there.
I'm going to add practical, like very, very practical advice, and stuff that doesn't have to be overly complicated. But yeah, like Tyler said, the employee ownership, walks through it beautifully. And, what a great thing that company has put into place to really build a culture of giving a shit is the way I'm going to put it.
Yeah, for sure. Just some stake and some accountability and skin of the game.
Yeah. Speaking of building science, back in college, I had this professor, and he was talking to us about a home he was building, and he was talking. He outlines it. He's like, no heat in the home. It's in the winter time, and I walk in, and I'm showing my wife this beautiful home I'm building, and the painter's still there, and he's in the living room, and he's sweating, and it's cold outside. And I walk over to him, and he goes, and I said, why are you sweating? He goes, I don't know. It's so hot in here. Can you turn the heat off? I can't work in these conditions. And he took about, 10 steps into a different direction into another room and realized that part of the room was cold. And it was, and he's telling this story, and he liked to embellish his stories. And he challenged us. He goes, does anyone know why he was sweating? And I don't remember. I probably had no idea at this point. And he goes, because we installed triple pane windows, and we were standing there, and he was standing there, and his body heat was literally hitting the inside of the window and reflecting back and boiling the guy as he was painting the walls.
That's a big difference from the older homes that I live and work in, where it's single pane and some storm windows.
Yeah, you're heating up the outside with your body.
Yeah,
heat.
your body heat is just going out. Big difference there.
Well, triple pane windows can be the ultimate solution for homeowners seeking unparalleled comfort, efficiency, and savings. Triple pane glass is your key to superior insulation and reduced energy bills.
Designed for high-performing homes, these windows elevate your living experience to new heights. Say goodbye to drafts and noise pollution while basking in abundant natural light and breathtaking views.
I like the added sound effect. Are triple pane windows worth it? Oh, I'd say absolutely. For those who value comfort, efficiency, and perfect home environment. To learn more about Andersen's triple pane window options, head over to andersenwindows.com.
Hey, Nick, I was thinking.
Were you thinking? Well, because if you were thinking, you'd be thinking about introducing software to your business. But you're worried that your team, or maybe just yourself, might struggle to get started. Here's what to do, Tyler. You're going to sign up for Buildertrend. It's the leading construction management platform for premier builders, and you designate a champion.
What's a Buildertrend champion, you might ask? It's a member of your team that ensures every employee has the tools and resources that they need to master the platform.
Now, Tyler, imagine if you designated a champion and that person got your entire team to have all the tools and resources. That could be one person for all. You could do it. Buildertrend supports your champion, trains them, and encourages them so that your company can onboard the software with ease under their guidance. When you have a Buildertrend champion, you'll get the most out of your investment, speed up daily processes and improve efficiencies, give your team the best chance at reaching company goals, and drive business growth.
Visit buildertrend.com/champion to sign up for Buildertrend and start your champion and your team on their journey to success. Who were we talking to recently where I had no idea that you worked in Greenwich?
It was a recent get. I don't
Or were
know.
we at I think we were at JLC maybe.
Or was it with Doug? Because we dragged Doug and Paul down.
Oh, it could. Yeah, you know what? I think it was Doug.
Yeah, it was Doug.
Yeah, you're right.
I think when we were up in Conway.
Well, they told me that you lived in Greenwich, and I was like, "Damn, I didn't realize he
No,
was like
I ain't got it like that.
That was initially.
I don't even go to dinner in Greenwich. We'll put it that way.
That was initially. They were like, "Oh yeah, he's from Greenwich," and I was like, "Really? Damn!" I was like, "He doesn't look like Greenwich." No offense.
No. I'm the northwest corner. That's the southwest corner.
Ah,
But yeah, that's the bulk of our work is that neck of the woods: Wilton, Westport, Norwalk, Stamford, Rowayton, Fairfield, all of that.
Well, dude, when we talked to you last, I think you were packing up in Maine and moving on down
probably.
there, right?
Probably. That was right about.
Was it COVID?
Because when was that? Like, yeah, it was probably early COVID or something like that. I think that was right about the time, yeah, that I was deciding to head back south.
And you grew up in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Greenwich.
God. I had the opposite direction. I had north.
How far away are you from Greenwich?
You don't look like a trust fund baby.
I'm not, which is why I didn't make it as a studio furniture maker. I went to school for that, and then I realized the only way to make a living is if you have a trust fund, and I don't have a trust fund, sadly.
It's true. So I had when I initially went to University of Colorado, and there was like a ton of kids. I forget what the name of the private school is in Greenwich, but like a ton of kids went there to see your Boulder, basically to ski. Like they were set up for life and just went there to ski. But then there was two kids who they were twins, and they came to school and they had like a Boston Celtics like throw up in their room. And then like their parents, we would drive. They had a house that was ski on, ski off Aspen Highlands. And you'd go there and there'd be like Range Rovers parked there, a ton of dirt bikes, like ridiculous house. And when they would drive, their parents like wouldn't let them drive in the same car.
Security or whatever. Yeah.
So we started like asking, and it turns out, I mean, they're from Greenwich, and their parents had, or grandparents had bought, owned, and sold the Boston Celtics at one point. And found out all about this afterwards, and that's when I learned of Greenwich and was like, okay. So at one point, I wasn't gonna come home on spring break Thanksgiving break, because I'm like, we're gonna be home in a couple of weeks anyway. Doesn't make sense to fly home for this quick weekend. And they were like, oh well, you can come with us. I was like, well, how are you getting home? I'm not driving. And they're like, no, you could just like, we're flying. And I was like, okay. So then they flew me on their private jet to Greenwich, and then they got me a limo, like a black limo, to Stamford train station. And then I arrived in Philly.
And then you realized that you were a pauper and one of the surf class. And
and then I arrived in Philly. And got picked up in my buddy's like beater of a car with no seat belts. And I was like, I just went from here to here real fast.
I feel like limousines aren't a thing anymore. Like they're for like
that's like people that are like trying to do like that throwback to the 90s or something like that. Like
it was like the Lincoln Town car.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I saw like a converted Lincoln MKZ limo or something the other week, and I'm like, that is like the ugliest vehicle I think I've ever seen in my life. I'm gonna not comment on that because I'll be canceled if I do. But
I mean, I think especially with Uber and Black Car, it's like, you just order one of those. You don't need a limousine picking you up.
I mean, when we went out to Andersen, they had us. I mean, it's not like a stretch limousine, but they got us a driver.
Okay, I guess when I say limousine, I'm talking about a stretch.
No,
A
yeah, I
driver's
mean,
different. A driver
Yeah,
in a
car
like a
service is
black
not a
car.
limo.
No, I'm
Yeah.
thinking like stretched out.
no, that's for like proms.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's keeping that industry
That's
in
my
business.
kids like still dream of being in a limo. They're like, let's get
Oh
a
my God.
limo.
And
Do you
then
know?
don't break it to them that it's going to smell like stale beer and vomit when
Yeah.
they do finally get
Oh
into one.
God.
Dude, what's the guy's name out in Northern California? I'm blanking right now with the long red hair, like ponytail. He worked with like Chase a bunch. He's always at IBS. The heck is his name? He
Long
was
red
at the
hair?
Mike Rowe. He always has a ponytail. Um, the heck is his name? He was at the Mike Rowe event with I'll find him. You'll know exactly who he is.
Okay.
But I remember being at IBS once and we walked out and we were going to like the young pros party and he flagged down a limo and bought a limo for all of us to get there. And that was like the last time I had been in a
Wait,
limo.
what? Was I
Yeah, it was
involved in
like,
that?
yeah, I think that was the
Why?
same night you fell asleep eating pizza.
Listen, I'm not someone that likes to
Shit
stay out that
happens.
late, I got dragged out. I ended up at some random hotel in the lobby and I ate a pizza and I fell asleep. Life was good.
Because you
Yep.
realize that like to get anywhere in Vegas is like an hour and a half undertaking.
Well, I think it was wasn't it with what's her name? Kate Rumson. She was like
That was
staying at
a different night.
Oh, I fell asleep twice eating pizza?
I believe so.
Interesting. Wouldn't put it past
Yeah,
me.
it happens.
Wait, so Ben, you said you're in the north. You
So
said
I'm
opposite corners.
I yeah, well that's where I'm from. I live in Sandy Hook. So
Mhm.
we're like right middle of the western side of the state. So going south for me is down into Fairfield County. Going north for me is Litchfield County.
So
South of me
how far are your
is
projects from where you live?
commuters. We're pretty well spread all over the place, but we keep project managers within 45 minutes,
Oh, that's not bad.
ideally,
Yeah.
of their projects.
Are
But
you a
we have
PM?
one right now that's stretching. No, I'm production manager
So you're overseeing the PM.
and yeah, and an owner of the company now.
I think I did know that.
Yeah.
For some reason I thought you were still kind of on site. So are you primarily office based?
Yeah, it's like I have to schedule myself to walk away from my desk.
Yeah.
So that's generally how it is. Like I meet with our team Thursday afternoons in our physical office, but most of the time I wake up in the morning, see my kid off to school, and I'm here at my desk. He gets home from school, I tap out for a while, then he goes to bed, and I'm back to my desk for as long as I can.
Oh, so you're working from home.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, coffee maker's like 12 feet that way.
Perfect.
Everyone always reference the coffee maker.
It's critical, man.
Yeah.
I run on a steady stream of caffeine and anxiety. That's how I get through my days. Yeah.
I would I can share that.
Yeah.
Sam Mankin.
Oh, he
Sam
didn't have it,
Mankin.
but he doesn't have a ponytail anymore.
Oh, he cut it?
I'm
I
pretty
don't know.
sure.
I'll forever remember him as having like a ponytail.
Yeah, he works with Dave Haynes.
Oh, yeah. Know what? On his page, he has a hair donation like thing that you can clip on. He donated his hair to Wigs for Kids. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he works with Dave Haynes now.
Yeah.
That's funny. I would not picture him as a redhead. When you said redhead, I'm thinking like red, like
I
burnt
don't think
orange.
many adults have like burnt orange hair anymore. I feel
Well,
like you could possibly be a redhead almost.
I got red in my
A
beard.
beard?
Yeah, in my
Yeah.
beard.
See?
My kids will tell me that I have white and red hair in my beard.
Yeah. You're on the threshold.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, so Ben, what was the transition and like from Maine to what you're doing now?
It's kind of strange. Like I had a tool belt on for 22 years or something at that point, and I went from having a tool belt on to being a laptop and a cell phone project manager. So that was a bit of a shift for sure. Um, Took me a while to adjust to that, but I love it. I was at the point in my career where I was actually probably going to start doing irreparable harm to my body if I didn't get the tool belt off.
Yeah.
So the timing worked out. And like somebody asked me about this a week or so ago. They're like, "Did you notice a change in the feeling of your body after you took the tool belt off?" And yeah, 100%. Like I get out of bed easier in the morning now that I don't have a tool belt on.
I want to pause on that for a minute because that comes up
Yeah.
constantly. We constantly talk about getting the tool belt off because it's going to do damage to our body. And I I I wonder if we're creating a bigger issue by saying something like that. Because and what I mean by that is so many guys get into this, love having the tool belt on, love working with their hands, and they're
Hmm.
bombarded with this notion that this is going to kill my body. I'm going to have bad knees. I'm going to have knee replacements. My back is going to give all of these things, and it almost is this force to get them out of the tool belt and take an office job, be a PM, be a site super, and we've said it before is I think that's the wrong move for
I
our
think it's, I
industry.
think it, I think it's highly dependent on the person because I
Well,
also
that's what I was getting at
work
is like,
I've worked with some guys that have had the tool belt on. You know, my
mm,
dad is 67 or 68, whatever he is now, and he still loves to have it on. He
yeah.
was never able to fully shed it.
And I know
Uh,
the question was directed to you,
and
right, Ben? Like this is your personal
yeah, like I
experience.
think like I've thought about that because it's like, well, you look at it from two ways. Is like uh either I don't have the physical constitution to make it 6 to 65 in the industry, or I didn't create a pattern of work life
Mm,
or work in a company that had a culture to support physical health
yeah.
in the way that I needed.
That I think that's a key point. And I just to finish my thought, we have these guys that are tradespeople and belt on or tools on, and there's this force to get out of it for the betterment of your health. And what happens is a lot of these guys aren't great managers, aren't great PMs, aren't great supers, aren't great
Hmm.
production managers, and their career kind of crumbles around them. And
Hmm.
and I think it's important at least noting like this is your unique experience, right, where it's not for everyone. And you hit the nail on the head that if you create or you work within a culture that does create a good physical health environment, then yeah, you could be like your father who's 67, 68 years old and still working with the tools and be in
Oh,
good
he's
shape.
67, 68, and he walks hunched over and hobbled because he
Well,
hasn't been able to get up.
I
That's
made a poor assumption.
yeah, but no, no, point absolutely taken. Like to elaborate a little bit more on like my own transition, like there was definitely a huge level of anxiety because that was all I had ever known was being on the tools and I knew I was good on the tools,
Hmm.
but stepping away and doing the desk and the administration and the management full time, I was freaked out. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to hack it.
Hmm.
And then what I've discovered now is like I used to have a huge disdain for the business end of it, but now that's where I'm fascinated now, like
Hmm.
building systems, building processes, tuning numbers and profitability and figuring out how to do all of that. And
Yeah,
then the building science shit.
yeah. I mean, for me too, and I'm sure you feel it. It's like when I'm in the office all day. Sometimes I talked about this on a podcast when it was just Tyler and I. But there's days I feel as though I haven't accomplished anything because I haven't physically made it to the job site. And like you, if I'm not scheduled to be on the job site, I won't go. But every
Hmm.
morning that I'm not scheduled to be on a job site, I get in my truck and I contemplate going to the job. Be like, you know what? I have the morning to just get work done, but I could delay it by an hour. I'm just going to go swing by the job site. And I don't really accomplish anything besides the fact that I get to see what's going on and have
Hmm.
a fresh understanding of where we stand in that very moment. But it's to feed my own ego. It's not like I'm
Yeah,
actually not.
that's like I don't like. unless they need me to come to the job site, I'm generally not getting anything productive done by going to the job site.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
hugely productive. Like I will find things and be like, oh, you need to look for blocking over here or something like that. But I mostly get to experience our job sites. I say that it's a little sad, but it's my reality is via a cell phone based security camera. And I
Mm.
check in and be like, yo, are the framers there? Did they get those walls up yet? Are we getting siding going on it? And I experience our projects via photos and videos from my guys.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it, I also had to realize like, I don't necessarily need to go out to those jobs for them to run well.
Mm.
Like I need
Yeah.
to hire good people and support them and get out of the way. Because a lot of times when I go out there, I insert myself and my ways of doing things into their process, and I'm probably just
Making it
slowing
more.
it down for them.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
So
I was on the job earlier today, and yesterday we had an internal meeting on site, and today we had the client meeting, and there was this discussion about changing something within the kitchen, and the kitchen is literally being installed. And so there was this kind of clear understanding yesterday, at least to my knowledge, that we were squashing it and we weren't entertaining it. And then we were on site today and the client asked my opinion. And of course, I came up with an opinion that actually worked, and it was, well received, but it was very much like you have just added a significant amount of work to a project that is already underway.
yeah.
Um, and and like you, it's like if I wasn't there, it would have went on just fine.
But the thing that I wrestle with is it's a tough balance on something like that, because it's, a lot of the value that you or I or Tyler bring to the project is our point of view and our
Yeah,
experience. And
totally.
sometimes if it's going to make the project more successful or the client more happy, even though we threw a speed bump in the line of production,
Hmm.
then it's still a win. But it's like, where's the balance? Like I can't micromanage all the decisions. So
Do you, would you consider yourself somebody who's just like an avid or voracious learner? Like you just enjoy learning
oh my
stuff that you
God, like, there's all building related books. There's a floor to ceiling bookshelf next to me. I just hoover up knowledge related to the industry. Like my recent rabbit hole I've been down is industry standards. So learning the relevant standards that we perform to: American Concrete Institute, Sheet Metal Associated Contractors of North America, Drywall Council, American Woodworking Institute. And that's like, these are like textbooks of like
light reading.
performance guidelines. And I'm like, ooh, this is great. Let me just like bask in this for a while. But like it all has a purpose. The
So,
question I get, yeah.
no, go ahead.
So a question I get all the time is people are like, well, how do you learn how to do all of this stuff? And I'm like, you pick something that you're interested in and you just dive into it. Like it doesn't have to be like what you're working on at the moment. Like if you're obsessed with wood siding, like nerd out on wood siding, or like learn about steam engines or something like that. If you follow your passions, eventually there's going to be some correlation with your work.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I ask, like, how much do you think the transition between belt on to the business side of things, like the success and how exciting that has been for you, um, would you say is just due to your personality type, where it's like I knew nothing about this and then I was exposed to it and now I'm going to learn everything that I have to about this?
I don't know. uh I'm definitely the type of person that, I had somebody write me in woodworking school a reference letter and they described me as having a questing personality.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I find something that I'm interested in, like I go head first into it,
I like
which helps.
anything that I find to be like long term enjoyment or um, fulfillment in my life is something that is difficult to master and almost constantly evolves. Like you get to a point where you're like, okay, I have this under control, but then there's this entire another layer that you can dig into even deeper. That's
hmm
the stuff in my life that really piques my curiosity and keeps me engaged the longest. Like I get very bored once I have something. Like half the fun is figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then after
I
that,
think
it's like,
that's
all
what
right,
makes.
what's
I think
next?
that's what makes an effective project manager or manager in general is your willingness to take on difficult situations and figure out solutions for them.
Yeah. And I could see you going down that path with the business side of things where it's like, this is nothing that I was interested in. And then as soon as you start learning more about it, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
so much knowledge, and you can take such a deep dive and you can constantly evolve, where it would be very consuming in a good way.
Mm-hmm. My when I'm not doing pre-construction or production management, my recent focus in the business has been systems and process development. So, like, we just finished a production process map where we take our projects from the point that the phone call comes in to the point that we follow up for quality assurance at 2 years after construction, and we mapped out all of those whatever 300 some odd milestones along the way, created who the responsible parties are, linked them to internal assets and support documents to administer those, and just like built out this whole map. And like a couple of years ago, I would have that you would have been like talking Greek to me,
Yeah.
asking me about something like that. And now I dive into it, and it's like not only, and it's for a purpose. This is for, as we, the company I'm a part of started as two brothers that founded it 25 years ago. When I joined, I was the fourth employee, and now we're at 10 in 4 years. And we're seeing a demand to grow beyond that. So in order for us to scale, I have to build these guardrails for people to operate inside of, because otherwise it's just you're doing triage all the time.
So the question I have with that, like you're building these systems for a 10-person team right now. Much of what you know is from a 4-person team. Like, how are you putting all this into place that it is applicable 5 more employees down the road?
Consultants.
So you're using other people's
Yeah.
knowledge, and because that's where it's like, and I feel it's something that I've done, that Nick's done, that we've done with the podcast, where like we're learning and then putting stuff into place, but we're already behind because our what we're learning and what we're gauging and the metrics that we have, by the time we put systems in place to handle them, we're already 2 more
You've
steps
already you've
ahead.
already eclipsed that.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, we work with a group called Helm that does construction management consulting, as well as construction management themselves,
Hmm.
as well as we're a part of NESE. Nick, I know you're familiar with NESE, Northeast
Mm-hmm.
Sustainable Energy Association. We're part of their peer-to-peer group called Bottom Lines, and we leverage outside sources to help us kind of leapfrog our own lack of knowledge. So these are people that may have been in much larger organizations. I got to work with somebody that I call a friend now, Greg Wallach, while he was at Helm, who was the production manager for Hobbs, which is like the largest luxury builder in our area up here. And to be able to like just sit with him every week for an hour and a half and just like suck sponge knowledge off of him was huge. So you need to you know not let pride get in your way and think that you have to create all these things yourself. Look outside. Like, there are plenty of groups and companies and organizations that specialize in helping construction industry businesses grow
That's what I was going to
and
ask you.
build
Are
systems.
are all of your consultants specific to the construction industry?
No. Well,
I guess
the
the reason I
consulting group.
ask is because I feel like most of us are just making shit up, and like our industry doesn't really have a lot of standards. And even like the top tier contractors, like so many of their systems are just in place because it worked for them at the moment that
Mhm.
it worked for them. And like I feel that we could probably bring a lot of business information, knowledge, resources from other industries to better
So
our own
so there
industry.
there is so part of that Nessie Bottom Lines group that we're a part of is it's not all builders. Like our group has builders, architects, mechanical engineers, weatherization contractors in it. And the thing that I've learned from being a part of that for, even with my own business, I was a part of these groups for 8 years now, is that you can look across our industry and the problems are all the same. You
Yeah.
can look to other industries and the problems are all the same. You
Yep.
just insert X title over it. Like my production manager is having an issue, or like my drafts person is having this issue, and somebody's had that problem, or somebody's built a system to deal with these things. So back to kind of your original question there, in Helm, when we work with them, they have consultants on their team that have no past history in the construction industry. Like we're going through a strategic planning initiative right now for 5 and 10-year goals for the company.
That's
And
with Helm?
and it's facilitated by a woman who has no background in construction, but her specialty is strategic planning. Like that's a whole silo out in the industry that exists, or out in industry that exists. And we're able to leverage her and follow like her career's worth of knowledge on how to do these processes and come out the other side. And it's like, I walk into them, I'm not wired like that. I'm like, what is this you're having us do? And then you get through at the end of the day and you're like, oh my God, I see what this whole process and these activities you just put us through was leading towards. And then you see that meeting was leading towards the next steps. So
how do you think you guys have been able to do that in such a short amount of time, where like I think there's a financial cost to just hire a consultant, but then you are now integrating your team in order to do this work and build these systems and work with these consultants. So you're also paying employees and pulling production out of them to be doing this stuff. So like, how is this something that a normal construction company could do?
I think you have to work on the business first. Like something that we don't talk a lot about in the industry is, we are taught to build good buildings, but we are not taught how to build good businesses. And that's something that if you want your company to be successful, just so that it provides for you and your people, you need to figure out how to run a good business in some form. Like, I think that's step one. I was lucky. I joined this company, and the two brothers, Mike and Chris Trolley, who founded it, put together a pretty strong backbone of a business to start with, so that when I and my other partner Albert came into the company, we had a framework to exist on. And then the other thing that really makes this work for us is communication. We have open communication. We became, January of last year, 2023, we became a worker-owned cooperative. So the four of us are now equal share owners in the company. And it's democratically structured. So we all have one vote. Nobody holds more power than the other one. And that allows us, to leverage each other's strengths to be able to get more done. I think if you were, yeah.
How did that come about? Specifically the partnership and becoming an owner, and just I think that's super interesting to hear that you join a company and become an owner, right? So
also, were the owners, did they have a background in construction?
So no. On the background, one was a mechanical engineer, and then the other one was a commercial real estate agent. And 25 years ago, they learned about high performance building. Mike did, and he said, "This is the wave of the future. This is all we're going to do. I'm going to start a company to do this." And he nearly lost his shirt a couple of times, as one does when they start a construction company. But the thing that sets us apart is we have done nothing but high performance for 25 years.
Yeah.
So
I feel like nobody who's like brought up from within the construction industry looks outward. Like, it makes sense to me that two brothers who didn't have a construction background decide to not give up. That's the only word I could, but like relinquish a portion of their company to two other partners, probably looking for your knowledge and expertise within the industry. Like, I don't feel like many people who are born and bred within the construction industry would even entertain that.
That was definitely part of it. I think, and I don't mean to speak for them, but I think Mike and Chris saw the fact that Albert and I brought strong points of view and strong skill sets from our own careers to the company. The other thing is both of them are approaching retirement age, and this presented an opportunity for the company to live on beyond them.
Yeah.
Like, when we look at the construction industry, and most construction businesses fold within 2 years. I forget what the statistic is, but it's ridiculously high. Fold within 2 years. To have a company that's lasted 25 years and then lasted past the original founding ownership, like, that's kind of a cool thing to, I have to think from their perspective, a cool thing to be able to look at. Like, I built this thing that not only lasted 25 years, but it's now outliving me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was not the exact same thing, but we were just away in Belize. My dad built a house in Belize, and we were out to dinner the one night, and my stepmom started talking to this couple that was there, and then like come to find out, it's the couple that started Dansko Shoes. And they like built up, I guess they're from Pennsylvania, like originally, and they built up this huge company. And I don't know if it was for like tax benefits or what, but essentially they instead of selling to like a big brand, and they had like, $150 million offers to buy the brand, they basically, it's like an employee owned company now. And you don't know exactly why, but their reason was to transition the business over to the people who helped build the business. And now they like took their money and they bought a bunch of land in Belize, and they're creating like sustainable agriculture over there. But that's the same thing where it's like these people started a shoe company and then transitioned that to an employee owned cooperative to be able to, rather than sell out to another company or close the doors, to be able to sustain that business past them, which is neat.
The other thing that it was attractive about going to a worker-owned co-op versus, a partnership, the difference there being that a worker-owned co-op has a structure in place for democratically managing it. There's a board, there's a series of processes and rules. It's not just you have half the profit, I have half the profit, but there is a mechanism in place that anybody that is an employee of us after a certain period of time and with an investment can also become an owner. And that investment, that period of time, we think is relatively low. And what that's allowing us to do is it's allowing us to attract and retain talent, and good talent, because they see like, hey, if I put the effort in here and I really work at this thing, like, I'm going to be part of this.
That's a good point. Because Nick,
it's working. Like, we're like in a time in the industry where I'm hearing people like, I can't get a project manager worth a damn to respond to my ads. Like, we've hired some incredible project managers recently.
Yeah,
and like when we put up the postings, we are flooded with good ones, and like, it's a process to sort through them.
Nick and I had just discussed, well, I guess not just, but over the past 6 months, where it's like podcast related, business related. How do you create an environment where people have stake in the business? And obviously what you're doing, but it like we were just saying, should everything be performance based, where it's like you shoot what you kill? And this seems like, I don't know the inner workings of how you guys are set up, but this is another way where it's like you're giving people stake, where it's more than just showing up as a 9 to 5 and 8 to 4:30, whatever it may be, to try and get the output and the productivity and just like the attitude out of employees.
What we're trying to, foster is people to think like owners. And it's not because we're trying to like maximize profit or like reap huge, numbers at the end of the year. It's because we want people to, pardon my language, to give a shit about the work we're doing and give a shit about the company, so that we're pushing forward. The thing that set us apart and the reason that we're seeing so much growth is the fact that we are a niche inside of a niche. We do high performance. We do sustainable. We are the ones pushing the bleeding edge of the industry. And, we want people, we have to have buy-in in order to maintain that.
Wait, so and I apologize if you already explained this, but it's the four of you as equal owners set up with
Correct.
one vote each, but everyone, how does everyone else get looped into that, into the employee owner?
So
Employee owned?
everybody can become an owner. The way we've set it is that it's after 2 years and it's a $10,000 buy-in.
And they,
And that 10,000, they don't have to put up 10,000.
Yeah.
That can be,
of course they can pay towards
capital
it.
that's
Yeah.
paid back out of
Yeah.
their capital accounts or whatever.
But they become an owner, and are you distributing additional shares, or are you reallocating the shares?
Well, then everybody is an equal share at that point.
So you are distributing additional shares.
It's not like there's like what is it, an ESOP where there's a set number of starting shares.
Mm-hmm.
The shares are based on one owner gets one share, and one share is equal to one vote.
That's
So
Right.
this is not like an openly traded. We're not going to
Yeah.
sell
No,
shares in the company. You know what I
understood,
mean?
but I'm thinking about just
Yeah.
like when I've dealt with partnerships and stuff like that, and we change, percent ownership. I'm not selling my share. They're not necessarily buying my shares. We might just release additional shares into that partnership to even things out. And it sounds like so. But in your case, I guess,
This is that the legal the legalese of how that is worded or function is
yeah.
not my strong
Yeah,
suit.
no, understood. So, like, if you have 1,000 shares, you start out with 250 shares, and then when you bring on someone else, you're essentially giving them 250 shares, and then
Essentially,
yeah, and then
it's
now
like,
there's 1,250.
we're
Right,
creating one more share, and that's for that
right.
person. Then the
So
other thing is that
in
there's four owners, and there's actually a fifth share, which is like forget what the term is for it. It's a golden egg share or something like that. And it's so if we decide to sell out the company or something happens to all of us, the company can exist on and go to a local charitable organization or something like that. So if for some reason we all cease to exist, we get hit by a bus, the business then becomes the property of whoever we deem the recipient of it
Does
is.
the recipient know that they're the recipient? Because I feel like you're setting yourself up to get hit by a bus.
Somebody's going to get a bus driver's license. Yeah.
I this is a completely separate note. I actually met someone that's in business. They have a partner, and they were talking to me one day, and I was like, "Oh, where's your partner?" He's like, "Oh, he's flying in on a separate plane." I was like, "Oh, you guys take different planes here?" He goes, "Always." I was like,
Dude,
"Why?"
that's like these kids that I went to school with.
Yeah. And it was and I had said, "Do you do the same thing?" Like, I told my wife about it, and she was like, "Do you think we should do that?" So, and I had asked them, I'm like, "Do you fly separately with your wife?" He goes, "No, no, no. It's about the business and the fact that he can take care of my family and I can take care of his family if anything were to ever happen."
Said half of nothing is still nothing. You know?
Um, going back to the employee owned. So anyone can become an owner after 2 years. They can buy into it, $10,000 buy-in. I understand that they don't have to bring that
And
cash in.
it's not a given that they are going to become owners just
That was
because
going
you've
to be my
crossed two
question. So
years.
what?
Yeah, so it's voted on by current owners.
So the four have to agree. Yeah, we should bring on him
The
as a
four or the five or whatever have to
yeah.
agree that, yeah, this
So
person has an interest.
in
They
in
are at
theory,
the time threshold. Yeah,
in theory, you could have 20 owners. That's the whole point of
correct.
this. Yeah.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and is
And
this
there's a difference between management and ownership, because you can be an owner in the company and reap the benefits, but not be in management.
meaning you don't have voting rights?
No, you have voting rights from a board perspective, but may not be in day-to-day management.
Wow. You don't necessarily. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So got it. Okay. And I had a separate question on that.
So when you guys put out your job listings, is I would assume if you're getting this much interest, that it's clearly communicated that this is the setup, not necessarily in detail, but that you're like an employee-owned company.
It's part of it. It's part
Yeah,
of our benefits package that we list.
That's cool.
And I think that that's part of the reason we get interest. But honestly, of all of our recent hires, I don't know that that was the defining factor on why they decided to approach us. I think it's,
What you do.
yeah.
Are you getting a lot of young men and women that are looking to work for you guys that are just interested in the high performance stuff?
Yeah,
More so than older.
definitely. Like,
Yeah.
I think the bulk of our workforce is kind of probably our collective age group. But we do, it's a spread.
Why do you think the younger generation is putting more of an emphasis on that?
Um,
I mean, even from your own sake, like what is it about it? Like it has to complicate things a lot and make
but
things
to
difficult.
your point earlier about the things you get interested in or the things where you can dive in and there's continual things to solve. I think at a core, that's what attracts most of us.
Mm.
Is that it's like, it's taking this home building, this construction thing we do, and it's like realize that like you just peeled the skin off of the onion doing that, but like there's a whole onion that you can now peel through to really start to get to the core of it. So I think that part of that is there, and then there's also climate action. I think
Yeah,
that's a big part of it, because not only like you can do high performance and not be good for the environment.
correct.
You load it up with spray foam and steel and plastic and glass, and it's not good for the environment, but it's high performance. But what we do is we try and do high performance and pay attention to the ecological impact. And I think for a lot of people, that's also a driving factor.
Do you think that we'll be able to get to a point with the industry that we can offer some of that to like more of the middle class and not have it be just for like the wealthy who are paying, not necessarily for a return on this?
Well, let's pause right there, because when we look at my budgets on projects, the things that make our projects high performance and low carbon are like less than a fraction of a percent of total job cost.
Like, and give us some examples.
Yeah, that's
Like
interesting.
like additional insulation.
Yeah.
Like the thing that's going to drive it is going to be the fact that we have the pool. That's going to be the thing that's going to change the job cost, or the thing that's going to change it is going to be the fact that you have 9,000 square feet for two people. Like
Yeah.
the thing in our projects, at least, that drives the cost difference is not the performance.
And
So
I
to
understand.
add some
I understand.
to add some credibility to that, there is a large growth right now in passive house certified low income multifamily in New York City. Low income multifamily passive house. And you know why that is? Because what they found is that for them to deliver passive house level performance, and granted it's easier on multifamily than single family, it's about a 1 to 3% cost additional. And then what they get is for low income multifamily, they get a set energy check. The developer gets a set energy check every month from the federal government for what their anticipated cost of operation of that building is. And if they're only consuming half of the energy, their check doesn't change. They still get
Mm.
the same check. So now what they're doing is they're hitting cost parity in a year or two, and every year of ownership of that building thereafter is generating more profit for them.
So they're able to build these low income developments for 1 to 3% more than it would be to build them in a traditional sense.
Correct.
And
At
it
code minimum. And that's to passive house level, which is
and
like
like what
not
would you
easy.
attribute that to? Cuz like in my
It's,
head I'm
you know,
thinking of it.
so the biggest thing is like, people think this high performance thing requires all these expensive materials and all of this detail and stuff. You know what really it is? It's really thinking about what you're going to do the week before you get to the job site and making sure you got the roll of tape there.
Yeah.
The problem is that we don't have an industry that does that, or we don't have an industry that's been taught what the things are to look for, so they don't know to order the roll of tape.
Hmm.
Like, it's as simple as that. well, probably not as simple as that. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's largely what it is. It's just gaining a little bit of understanding of how buildings operate so that you can do the work when you're there.
So for
Or even better,
somebody,
so the architect can draw it in the drawings and think through it before it even comes out of the ground.
yeah.
I've said that before. I mean, residential construction specifically, I think commercial does a better job about thinking things through, but we don't put enough emphasis on the preparation of building. And that is, and it's weird because like if you think about production building, that's all they do. It's like they're figuring everything out way ahead of time, flipping the floor plan left, right, backwards, front, like, and then putting up a thousand of them. So everything is figured out in that sense. And then you get
And
the
every
soup.
nail, every foot of wire is
Yeah.
already figured out so
And then
that
you
they
get the
die.
super high end where it's like these monster homes that are for the 1% that do spend $1 million in architecture and have a MEP engineer and all these, but it's like everyone that is over a production style home but under the super elaborate custom home gets shafted, where it's like
So
you
my little Robin Hood mentality about this is that I'm going to use the clients that I am fortunate enough to work with who have the
yeah.
disposable income to figure these things out on their dime, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to share it with anybody who wants to listen.
Mhm.
And like that goes to my question where it's like, how do we get this in the hands of the average consumer? Because right now it's almost common knowledge that it's like, and
Well,
you're
here's the thing: the
correcting me that
code,
it's falsely so that like this can't be had for a reasonable price.
the code is going to push us to
Mhm.
quite good performance here very soon. We're already on the threshold of it. 2021 in our climate zone with an R60 roof and an R30 wall or 23 plus 5 thermally broken wall assembly, like that's a pretty good house. Like full disclosure, as a company, when we saw R60 roofs, which was like our territory for the last decade, when we saw that in the code, we're like, where are we going next?
Yeah.
Because the code is catching up with us.
Do you think,
So,
but well, all right,
and
on
like
that.
it's only gonna go further because I can tell you right now, like Passive House US, is sitting on the ASHRAE councils, which are going to develop the energy codes for 2027 and 2030. So we're going to see our housing codes trending towards Passive House very quickly, just like much of Europe has done.
But let's talk about that for a second, because you talk about R60 for the roof, and and how like you being challenged with, okay, where do we go next? There's a point where there's the diminishing return. So
Correct.
we think about what's interesting to think about is like you're talking about how we're going to essentially be at Passive House very shortly here in the code. I agree. I think it is very soon. In some areas, they're already pushing it, right?
Hmm. Especially
What?
in math, you eat,
Yeah,
sleep, and breathe this stuff
yeah.
around you right
I mean,
now.
but what is that next step? We get to that point. We are now building passive, you know,
Okay.
passive level homes here, and then they sit down to meet about code. What are they going to ask for? Like,
All right.
is
You want to know what
I
we're
do,
looking at
I
as a
do,
company?
yeah.
So the things that we're paying a lot of attention to is carbon,
Mm.
which is a very hot button item
It's
in
also very
the
like
world right now.
difficult to understand, I think.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't
There's
have to be, but it is. And and and
yeah,
and I say that
it,
like
it-
truthfully, even for me, it's very hard
yeah.
for me to understand. It's like, oh, I understand the premise behind building carbon neutral and things like that, but and it's one of those things where, hey, it is actually a relatively simple concept, but it's difficult to actually sit down and measure, in my opinion, and
Okay.
which makes it difficult for the adoption of it. Which could have been said the same for passive construction, like passive level construction, where that is becoming more understood in our industry, and people are, like airtightness became, I don't want to say popular, but like people all of a sudden understood what it meant to be airtight, and now people are going out like challenging themselves, like how tight can I build my home?
How tight can I get it?
Yeah,
Great.
and that's a great first step, but there's so many other things.
So here, so on the carbon thing, just to shed a little light on that, there's a great tool out there that's free called Beam, Building Emissions and Materials. All right, this is made by Builders for Climate Action, Chris Magwood and his group out of Canada. It's totally free. You can download it, and essentially what it is a very simple Excel spreadsheet that you put some measurements in for your building, like how many cubic yards of concrete in the foundation, how many square foot of exterior building envelope, and then you can go through and choose different materials, and it will show you immediately what the carbon difference is between them.
Holy shit! Just for anyone
Super
that's
easy.
not
Anybody. Like it took me, I learned it, Nick, I learned how to do it in an hour on a flight to Las Vegas.
Well, good Wi-Fi. I never had good Wi-Fi on the airplane. Just real
At
quick,
Delta, you got to do Delta.
I do Delta, and it's always fucking broken.
It's only the little ones. It's the little planes.
And then she's like, "Let me go reset it." I'm like, "You're not gonna reset it for me."
Yeah.
Real quick, buildersforclimateaction.org.
For climate action.
Yeah, /beam-estimator. That's
So it is free. They will ask you if you want to throw a couple bucks in the hat as a donation. I strongly urge you to, because I know these people, they have put out blood, sweat, and tears to develop this tool so that it is available. There are tons of carbon accounting tools built for commercial that are way beyond the scope of what us residential guys need. They've developed a tool now that we can use. So I'm just imploring you, if you can throw a couple bucks into their hat, please do. So that right there, that's the carbon piece. Like, we can now very quickly choose between different materials and see the impact on the carbon of our building. The next thing that we're going after is indoor air quality and indoor environmental quality. So going after ventilation, going after filtration, going after humidity control, that's a big one. Like, it wasn't until COVID happened that people started talking about ventilation rates. The only people that talked about ventilation rates before that were nerds like me at building science conferences. So now people, like, we care. We realize that we realize that we're like swimming in a pool of our own, noxious outputs and toxic chemicals every day. So we're trying to pay a lot of attention to that, because we feel that's how we're going to push forward.
And essentially that's coming into place due to air tightness.
Yeah, well, you got to build it tight and then ventilate it right. Like, you can't control the quality of the air inside the building until you have an airtight enclosure. And anybody that's done remodeling, that's taken apart old walls and has seen the gross disgustingness that you find inside of old walls, that's what you're breathing right now, and that's what your family's breathing right now.
Yeah.
Like, not to be foul about it, but we pulled plaster off of a building one time and found 40 inches of mouse droppings in a wall cavity.
40 inches?
Like 40 inches.
That's decent insulation, though.
That was I don't know what the R value of that
mouse
is.
droppings.
It's also probably like hantavirus and all that too, but like, that's what people don't realize. That's what they're breathing. Like,
it's not even that they don't realize it. It's just that they have no understanding of it. It's like, why would the air from inside the wall be the air that I'm
in
breathing?
My house?
Yeah. I mean, it just wasn't a concern, and it's not how we built. Like, it's the old school mentality. Like, I literally just had a conversation with an old plumber. You're building houses too tight. That's the problem. And it's just like the old school mentality where, you had an old house with brick nogging and structural clapboard, and air came in and air came out.
That's what the horse-drawn carriage makers said about the cars.
Yeah, like, right? Not an issue. But now when it's sealed up and you have like fiberglass insulation or like all of this stuff and drywall and paper and the products that we're using, now it's like, this is a big concern.
Ben, are you guys putting air quality meters in your homes?
Yeah.
And is it a standalone thing, or is it?
Yeah, and it's something that we're just starting to fully roll out and force because we haven't been able to decide on the best way to do it. But yeah, we do a pretty broad suite of monitoring on our projects. So
And
we're
what
doing,
what
yeah.
monitor are you using? I'm just
So
curious.
so the personal one that I lean on is the Airthings View Plus.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of the best one on the market at the moment. Um, it's $250 or something like that. It does temperature, relative humidity, VOCs,
Yeah.
particulate, CO2, and radon,
And
which is
so that is strictly just monitoring, right? Like it's not triggering the
yeah.
ERV, it's not doing any of that.
No, but you can do that, and that's where I think the ventilation industry is headed. Is
Yeah,
that we're going to
into
have
this automatic, right?
demand response based control of a lot of stuff, or like, oh hey, we turned the range on and the range hood kicks on automatically,
Right.
or the somebody turns the dryer on so it kicks on the makeup air.
It's funny
So who should,
because so good.
I was just gonna who like moving forward, who should be responsible for all of this? It's like HVAC contractor, architect, builder.
So we should be responsible for what? For the monitoring?
I mean, just like at this point, the systems that we're putting in place, I think about my existing HVAC contractor and like how do they know what to do? Is it the architect? Like what will be the standard moving forward as far as who knows how this is all going to come together to build a house that has a healthy air quality?
Uh, I think the code is largely going to push a lot of that, and I think this is an area where, like Nick, your question was like R60 roofs and R30 walls. Like we're there. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of evolution beyond that, and we
Hmm.
will start to see a lot more evolution around. Indoor air quality and mechanical systems and mechanical system efficiencies and distribution and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So because right now that's literally that's our niche in the business is that we are the ones that are responsible for that
Yeah.
because it's a tough one for like the HVAC industry is underwater.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. Like moving forward, when the hopes is that this is the standard, right? Like that we get to a point where this is what everyone's doing. Are we going to be leaning on HVAC contractors to be the ones designing this, architects designing this? Is it going to be on the builder, a combination? Like what's a perfect situation, like in a perfect world?
Well, it's already partially in the code. Once you hit 3 air changes per hour of less of air tightness, you have to do mechanical ventilation. The problem right now is you can do supply only, exhaust only, balanced or balanced with energy recovery. What we need to do is we need the code to rip the band-aid off and just do balanced with energy recovery, which is where it's going to head.
hmm
Because one of the things that happens, this is the old timers, you need to let the house breathe. The problem is that when you build buildings very tightly, you have to manage the moisture really well. And if you don't, then we end up with the sick house syndrome. My dad started doing super insulated houses back in the late 70s and had to live through that early spate of time in the early 80s when like there was mold growth outbreaks in houses because they were building them too tight and not ventilating them. So eventually the code's going to catch up with the fact that, all right, we've got them onto using mechanical ventilation. Now we have to do it with energy recovery because it's going to lead to buildings that are more durable. So it's a life safety concern and then healthier.
Do you find it difficult when you're managing your trades? I know that you're not necessarily doing that on a day-to-day basis now, but integrating these new systems into the builds, like is it a huge learning curve, or is this something that people are able to grasp?
Uh, we're lucky that we work with good trade partners that are generally receptive to the stuff that we throw at them, but I am routinely challenging and pushing them, and it isn't always smooth sailing to get up to the next hurdle.
Yeah. I think I mean not that I'm doing what you're doing, but a lot of times it's like getting the most out of your subs ends up being really difficult when they could just go work for somebody else and get paid. Like it's easier even if they're making less money. It's just like, well, there's not as much risk. It's the systems. I don't have to have special techs in place to do this. And I feel like that's got to be somewhat of a challenge for you guys.
Not really. And the reason I say that is because, we really work on treating our trade partners well, and not being the builders that are calling barking that we need them there tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's
piss poor planning. Like, hey, just
proper
again,
prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
yeah. I mean,
It's that. And
it goes back to what you said earlier. It's like, just, hey, you want to build a better house? How about just think about what you got to do next week instead of the day before?
And like, we bring them in like before the house even comes out of the ground. We have
Sure.
our plumber coming in to sit with the architects, and we have our HVAC guys coming in to sit with us and try and like talk through this so that everybody has a say. And guess what? Like, if it costs more for us to deliver that level of service, then that's what our clients are paying us to do. So we are going to pay them that. We're not. I am not, as somebody who's worn a tool belt, I am not trying to strip my trade partners for every dollar of profit I can get out of them.
Right. So other than so right now in your world, the customers are paying for this knowledge and developing these systems and everything else. You have a platform to be able to educate as much as possible. But in order to make this a standard, like, who do you see stepping in? Enforcing code is one thing, but like, how are we going to train people to understand this? Like, are there going to be tax credits for doing so? Like, is it just going to be up to the contractors to do it?
So do you guys do blower doors? Do you guys have code mandated blower door tests on your projects now?
Yeah.
I don't do anything that, I mean, it's just not what I do right now. So I'm not doing new build. So we're not, no.
But I think your area probably does or is about to start having them.
Probably soon. I do not believe we do right now.
Yeah. What that means is you're going to have to call a third party outside verifier to do that for you. So for us, we build in some areas where we're building to the stretch codes in areas of New York where they require third-party quality assurance from the beginning of construction. And what that means is that we have a person that comes in and checks that, the below grade foundation insulation is correct. It's what's specified and it was installed properly. And then they're coming in and they're doing a blower door test, and they're coming in and they're checking insulation qualities, and they're checking the materials we're choosing for air quality concerns. And it's an additional cost, but it's not a huge additional cost that we pay in order to meet those performance goals. Eventually that's going to be where we're at. This is what Canada does in a lot of areas right now where they are pushing stretch codes. So people, it's the spot where this gets difficult is talking about first upfront cost, because that's what NAHB wants to banter about is that this is raising the overall cost of construction by $20,000, whatever the number is that they come up with this year.
Yeah.
But the part that they don't talk about then is that it lowers the operational cost of the building. So now the people are more likely to pay the debt service on their mortgage. They're more likely to be, financially stable because they're not, at the whims of energy market price fluctuations and,
so let me ask you
bills.
Let me ask you that, Ben, because I'm sure it exists. I just don't know about it, but I can't be the only one that wonders. Is there like that when you hear, hey, spend the $20,000 now because you're going to make it back in X time. And oftentimes like the payback is, they say that anything over 7 years, it doesn't register with people. Most people don't
stay. Yeah, because average home ownership in the US is what, like 8 years or something, though that is climbing.
Yeah, somewhere around 7-8 years. So, okay. So, but if there's a world where it's like, hey, this payback is in 3 years, 2 years, the calculation in order to get there is oftentimes, pen and paper, someone sitting down doing the math out and being like, hey, it's 3-year payback. But unless you got to be pretty convincing to a potential client, with that. Is there a calculator or something that you're able to kind of model this, or is this part of when you're doing the HVAC mapping? Like, hey, this is what you end up with equipment, here's how much money it's going to be saving you each month based on a traditional system.
So there's not an easy plug and play calculator there. It's energy modeling is what you're asking about. So what we do is we retain somebody to do energy modeling starting at SD on our projects. So then when they're massing out the projects, they can say, oh, this one's going to take a lot more to operate. And then we can start to do, payback period analysis on that. But something that I want to really make sure people understand is we're talking about this in terms of affordability and in form of dollars and cents, but there's additional benefits here. Like we touched on that ventilation thing. Like if you build a house following sound building science principles and of high performance, then you end up with a house that's more comfortable. You end up with a house that's healthier to live in, and you end up with a house that's more durable. Like those are all easy things to sell people on. Like nobody, you want your mother-in-law to be uncomfortable when she's sitting next to the window at your house?
No comment.
Yeah, depends on who you ask.
You want to hear her opinion when she's uncomfortable sitting next to the window in your house?
See, you got to know what to ask. You got to know what to ask.
So there's a lot, I think a lot of the high performance industry has done ourselves a disservice by talking about this in terms of energy savings. Like we need to talk about this from health, comfort, and durability.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think that there's always like a hyper focus on things, and just like I said a couple minutes ago about air tightness, like air tightness became really popular to understand and something that was really achievable, and then all of a sudden we're measuring it, so then people are competing about it, right? It's someone posts a story about their blower door, that person's getting 100 DMs. What was the score? What was the score? I want to know. How'd you do? Am I better than you, or am I worse than you? And if you're better, if you're better than me, then I'm gonna go try to beat you.
I got to step it up on the next one.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
And and that's the fun part, right? Like that's the execution, and that's
great. We just need to now do that with we need to throw air quality monitoring into the buildings and be like, yeah, how's your particulate level doing?
Yeah, but
how's your CO2 level, your nighttime CO2 level in your building?
And the dangerous part of that is, like I was talking to one of the trades at our White Oak project, and we were talking about content, and they were talking, we were talking about like holistically, but I said one of the negatives about it, unfortunately, it's not negative necessarily for the industry, but the negative for some people in the industry is that we're showcasing so much about how to do the right thing that the guys that are doing something that isn't quite right, or maybe it's at a higher price point than what they're putting out in terms of work, they're getting challenged by people. And and most of the time it's fine, but there are some clients where it's like, no, I saw Nick use Grace ice and water on the entire roof, so you have to do it too. And it's like a small little cape, and he's like, I didn't price it that way, and it's also not required. My point with that is, when we start implementing all these things, air tightness, air quality, and we do promote that, like, hey, this is the standard, there's this balance of understanding that there's millions of homes that will never meet that criteria. And when we talk about health and wellness and air quality, now you're not talking about how tight the home is and how little money I spend on heating and cooling it. You're talking about the fact that my kid's going to have asthma. And that's way more personal. And that's going to be the dangerous dance of getting promoting great craft in the new.
Why is it dangerous though?
Dangerous in the sense
what you're describing to me sounds like the skin knees of progress.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I mean dangerous in the fact that there's gonna be this huge upset that's going that people are just gonna uncover the fact that millions of homes are just not up to par. And it's going to create a giant demand to improve them. But I guess I don't mean it. I don't mean it dangerous in the sense that the cheaters are going to get caught. I mean it in the sense that they are going to get caught, and this is going to have this massive ripple effect of realizing that we've just built some pretty shitty stuff, and now we need to, and now we need to fix it. and not to kind of support, being naive, but there will be that level of it too, where you're going to get a bunch of homes that test really poorly, and that builder just simply didn't know. He's like, oh, I didn't know I couldn't use that material in the wall, or that it would off gas and give your kid asthma, and that person ends up with a lawsuit against them. And I think I guess that's what I mean by the danger of
Well,
it.
so I think, in order for something like that to happen, there has to be a standard in place that codifies that you can't use that material because you have to meet X, Y, and Z indoor air quality, right?
Right, which we're
And
not
in
there
order
yet.
for that,
Yeah.
which we're not there, and also just like blower doors have been in the code since 2018, 2015. But different municipalities can choose whether or not they adopt that, and then their way that they roll out those standards to their local area. So this is how code works in the US. So we will see that. We will see the code. Not every municipality, actually, frankly, very few adopt the whole body code right out of the gate.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they all have their amendments to it and their chunks they pull out. Like, that's going to be the progress. And there's going to be a learning curve where we have a code education in your area to be like, what's going on with this new air quality code? And there's going to be something put in place by the authorities having jurisdiction that helps bring people up to speed, because that's their job.
Mm-hmm.
Is
that's the bumpy road of progress.
So, like,
it's gonna be messy.
Even with blower doors right now, it's almost as if with the blower door code that there should be something with the indoor air quality code as well. And having that blower door code coming out without that being in place is not shouldn't they be happening at the same time?
No, it is there. It's there.
Okay.
So once you hit 3 air changes per hour or less, it automatically triggers the code that you need mechanical ventilation.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And that's how the code addresses
which, to be fair, does not mean you have good indoor air quality. It just means
that's correct.
That you are just
you have some sort of air exchange that's happening in the building.
You have a higher chance of better indoor air quality because of that.
Full disclosure, my house that I live in is 1850s salt box, post and beam framed, and I have excellent indoor air quality. You know why? My house leaks like a sieve.
Yeah.
It looks like I see a little vent back there.
No, that's where I took the smoke detector off because I didn't want it beeping.
I literally am staring at smoke detectors on the bookcase next to me right now.
Guys, you want to throw one in an envelope to me, and I'll make sure to put it on the shelf with the battery out of it?
I would, but my wife's going to be pissed because they've been sitting there for 2 years waiting for me to put them up.
I love the fact that we all have smoke detector issues right now.
Yeah, but it's ventilation. That's what triggered it. That's step one, is that there's some form of ventilation for air exchange. The next step will be that it has to be filtered.
Right. And then
it will have energy recovery.
And then monitor
that.
So what is the plan for you? Like, as these are implemented in your area, like you said, there's a concern where now this is code. How are we differentiating? What do you guys intend to do to set yourselves apart?
We're the ones. So Steve Basic has a great line that I love. He says, so do you build good buildings? And everybody says, yeah, of course. He says, well, how do you know? We measure them.
Yeah.
Why is he always such a wise ass?
But he gets to the point, right? He gets to the point. How do you know your building's good? So what we do is, and this is hand in hand with like our monitoring that we do, is we measure it. So then we can say for sure, like, oh yeah, here's how we do it, and here's the technology that we use, and here's the research and the experts that we've employed in order to come up with this strategy.
Is there like a business opportunity there with you guys as these things progress, either from a consulting perspective or services that you guys offer?
Yep.
Are you guys exploring that?
No comment.
He's like, I got $1 million bucks into it.
The goal is that like at some point I will be able to pull myself out of production management, and some of my other owner partners will be able to pull ourselves out of the day to day. And one of the things that we'll focus on is consulting for other builders, architects, and clients, and then also doing some owners rep work and stuff like that.
I mean, that's the natural progression, I think. And I think that will always be this need for something like consulting. It's a shame that we can't. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where it will be simple. And I think that because
building's difficult,
building is difficult. You're literally building, a prototype every time. I forget who said that, but it just the code is adjusting so quickly. The entire country doesn't get on board at the same time. So then you have different towns, different cities, different counties, different states, different parts of the country, all doing things differently. And you're trying to standardize. You're trying to standardize the process in a way that someone can look at and say, I can do this. And while equally dealing with an industry that has people that have been doing it for a very long time, and then other people that are getting into it at a point where we're still on the cusp of making things legit and actually up, like holding them responsible for it, and not.
So I think that we are at that cusp, and the thing that we have going for us is that the I've been doing it this way for 30 years crew is going to age out of the industry at the same time that we're bringing in a younger group that is saturated with information sorting abilities. Like, these younger people have been inundated by information 24 hours a day since day one, so I'm hoping have the ability to parse through this stuff much quicker and get up to speed quicker. Like when I started in the late 90s, it was 2x4, 16-inch on center, half-inch plywood, Tyvek. You make the X cut at the window, you fold the Tyvek into the opening, you put the bats in the wall. Everybody knew how to do it. Now, that is not the case
That's
anymore.
debatable.
Well, totally. I'm giving extra credit here that everybody knew how to do it. But you know what I mean? Like, there was one modality, there was one system on how we built here in the US. That is not the case anymore. Like, you guys know what we do on a day-to-day basis is like shepherd information back and forth about 1,000,005 decisions that go into a project.
And it's making sure that everything plays well together. And that there are so many things changing so quickly to ensure that we don't wind up in the position that we did 20 years ago or what we're facing now because we just thought this was right and didn't actually verify, gauge, and measure what was going on.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole rabbit hole.
Oh, man.
It's, something to add to what you just talked about. Like, there was one system for window openings, and now there's all these systems, and we're shepherding this information. But I'm also thinking about recently, I was asked to come in and show how we tape a window, and I was like, I'm not the right person for that. Like, I understand the premise behind it. I've been involved with guys like Sega. Like, I get it, but I'm not the one that does it every day. And they're like, no, we get it. We just want you to walk through. And what I didn't know is that they were also bringing someone else in to do it. And they let him go first. And it was exactly what you just described. It's the whole old Tyvek method. Everything wraps in, and the window went in, and they're watching me watch this guy. And one of them walks over to me and says, what do you think? I'm like, oh, everyone does it just a little bit differently. And
nice. And go into politics.
I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I'm not going to bash this guy. And they're like, they were like, I want you to understand that this is the way that most of the industry thinks it's supposed to be done. And I said, well, when he watches what I'm about to do, he's going to think I'm on crack. So we'll see how this plays out. And I did. And I remember going through it and going back, like, I couldn't remember like exactly what step. And I realized like his way in his mind was right, but it was also very simple. And with the way I did it, it was not simple. and there was redundancy, and there was complications with, or the origami of tapes and things like that, where in that moment, it reminded me, I was like, this is why it doesn't get done, is because it's too complicated. And it's not the way, like, it's easier to do it the way that it's always been done than to learn a new way that's not only new, but also like more complicated to understand, especially for the first one or a handful of times.
So Peter Yost at the Portland Building Science Symposium 2 or 3 weeks ago did a presentation. He gets called in for a lot of forensic building analysis work. And his idea is that these details that we're coming up with now, especially around window and door openings, are too difficult for our trades to be able to deploy repeatably. And the reason he was able to say that is he got called into projects completed by high performance builders that do very good work where there was failures happening. And what that says to him is like, here's the guys that know what they're doing and have the conscientious workforce, and they're struggling.
Yeah.
So what that means is like, we need to continually be looking at ways to make this simpler. And his idea is that, we can build a door on a Hyundai to go down the road at 90 miles an hour during a rainstorm and it stays watertight. How do we do that on a house? And it's repeatable, and they do that, but no, I'm right there with you. There is something to be said about simplicity.
Yeah.
I think something that the high performance world does a lot, and I'm guilty of it earlier in my career too, is we see all these fancy European products and assemblies and difficult things, and we're like, well, I gotta do this. This is that's bomber, right? But there's something to be said about trying to keep it as simple as possible and trying to use off the shelf products, because that's the way we're going to scale.
Yeah, and you think about, like, back to the Tyvek example, it's, it was Tyvek, Typar, maybe felt paper. That's what you saw.
Yeah.
And now, like, it's such a great example, because now it's, that now you have,
40 different WRBs you can choose.
You have staple up, you have self-adhered, you have the panels that are pre-applied. It's, you have tapes,
the
you have
spray
liquid
applied,
flash,
the roll on. Yeah.
and it's, and it becomes this, like, game of, who's better, what color is better, and it's all it's like wine. You buy wine for the label. Everyone's buying the WRB based on what it looks like, and it's like, well, I like my house to be green.
Matches
like,
my company's trucks.
I like blue. It's like, well, I like baby blue, and it's interesting to see how that has become the norm, and to think about simplifying that. I think that there's two things. Like, obviously, the education around, hey, it doesn't matter what you use. You can literally use pretty much anything as long as it's installed correctly. And, there's that, but it's also, hey, guys, instead of everyone competing for the same freaking thing, keep doing what all these other bigger companies are doing and buying up everyone else, and just have one product that they take and they manufacture to the highest level. Take a little bit from everyone and be like, hey, here you go. Now you don't have to go and compare this blue to that blue and this one to that green.
Well, I think the natural growth in any market is that you're going to see a plethora of options come out, and then time and attrition takes its toll, and then you're left with the cream rises to the top, or the cheapest options remain.
Well, look at clapboard siding over the last 25 years, all the synthetic stuff. At least around here, I've seen a lot of that stuff be replaced. A lot of the the cardboard stuff that was supposed to be bomber, as you say, and it never survived.
I find
even fiber cement, even good fiber cement, we're starting to see after time, like in a cold climate, that stuff has problems.
Someone just posted a picture of it here in Massachusetts. There's a fiber cement job it's brand new, and it all failed, and they're stripping it all off and replacing it all. It's like,
it's a tough time, because, like, we are pushing very quickly ahead, and we are inundated with new products that we don't know how they're going to perform.
Yeah.
I think it's neat the point that you made, trying to create details where people can use off the shelf products. Um, and I've never heard it said like that, but it is really important, because you think of the bulk of our industry as going in when they're picking up whatever they're picking up from the lumber yard. They're not pre-ordering whatever adhesives they need, waterproofing membranes, all of that stuff, and understanding enough about what's going on and what you have to do to be able to walk into a lumber yard and buy stuff off the shelf and then execute details the way that they have to be done is, in my opinion, really the only way to scale this. Like, people just they're not going to order liquid flash online or from their wholesaler like before they need it. And then making sure that decent products are actually on the shelves.
And I think we live in a time where we're absolutely that it already exists.
Yeah.
Like, I know I have very good lumber yards around me that I can walk into, but I can build an incredible house without having them special order anything.
Correct. Yeah, that's exciting, to be honest. I have a few friends who are younger than me that are getting into this, and I have to say that it seems as though, I mean, there's always like a hang up between the younger generation and the older generation butting heads and wanting to do things differently, but like a handful of the people that I know are taking the initiative to learn and to do things the right way, and at least question why they're doing things, which I don't feel that we did for a really long time.
That was a thought that passed through my head a couple minutes ago when we were kind of going down this tirade about, all these products that are out there. And I just lost my train of thought.
About questioning why you're doing things.
Yes. So that, I think, more so than picking a product, is understanding why we're using something in this location to begin with. Because I think that we just like, oh, we staple the thing on the outside of the house. Well, how many carpenters know why?
Mm-hmm.
Like, really understand why? Like, that's something that's missing in the industry, is those core principles, those core bits of knowledge of like what the function of something is. Like, what allows us to set ourselves apart as a business is when we get a set of drawings for a project, we are asking why about a lot of the things that are on those drawings, because that allows us to kind of unpack the thought process and figure out, like, do we need all of these additional layers and these additional special order items, or can we accomplish that with one thing that does the same thing?
Has
It's
this been something that you've had to, like, I guess it's chicken or the egg, but like, are you training your designers and architects to be doing this, or do you have architects, designers who are coming to you saying, hey, this is how we want to do things?
we are lucky that we get to work with some that are very good, that
Yeah.
come to us generally with details that require me only to make minor suggestions. But we are also seeing younger architects come up in the field that need a substantial amount of hand holding.
Because
And that's just,
I'm thinking of like
it's fine.
executing details and the evolution of our industry and the products that we're using. And it's like, we need to create details that work, that are simple, that are trainable, that we can have manufacturers come out. Like, to create a detail on a home to reach a certain level of efficiency or durability where it's like, it's not repeatable, you can't execute it, and it's so complicated that the chances of executing it is slim to none. It's like, we need designers and architects and systems that are easily executed and still durable. And then it's like, all right, now we can have the manufacturer show our teams how to install this, or what, like, and it's repeatable and it's the same way. And you can integrate these systems into jobs where everything's not one off and everything's not fully cut. Like, we're not trying to create and reinvent the wheel on every job.
So part of what my role in the company is that is standardizing assemblies. Because over the 25 years of the company, one of our trade partners that's been with us for like 15 years, carpentry trade partner, said, we've never done the same window install twice.
Yeah.
And I was like, that has got to change, because if we want to grow this thing and scale this thing, like just for our own success as a company, these need to be repeatable things. So it's like, oh, I'm going to a BPC project, I know this is what the window install is going to look like.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
there's
they
so many
know.
levels to that as far as like
Hmm.
efficiency, estimating jobs,
Hmm.
budgeting correctly, and then like just managing
Hmm.
risk. Like
Yep.
if you're doing a different window installation every time, do you know how much risk you have every single, like, is this going to hold up? Is this going to last?
Yeah, well, that's in a lot of ways that was us trying to figure out what worked, and like I think where at least we are as a company is like we know what's repeatable and what's easy, and I favor things that are off the shelf that aren't special order. Um, Nick, to something you said earlier about people, competing on airtightness scores, like I think that's good, but it's also unhealthy because like personally, I'm good with like one air change per hour.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't need to be passive house level, because to me, that's where the math works out. Like if
Mm-hmm.
we get to one, like that house is going to perform perfectly fine.
Yeah,
It doesn't need to go much tighter than that. There's not going to be enough of a decrease in the load. There's not going to be a decrease in the mechanical system sizing. I'm not putting the building at undue risk because of moisture or something like that. That's fine. So it's great that we have these uh, measuring competitions. But if you understand the core principles of what airtightness is supposed to do, then like you realize like that's a fool's errand. Like you hit
right.
one, that's great. You hit 1.5 on a retrofit, you're crushing it.
Right.
Cool. That's where I also have issues with some of the standards that require us to hit a certain energy intensity. Those are, that's good to push forward, but that's not reality for all projects.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a struggle moving forward too, where whatever is getting put into place or written into the code to ensure that we aren't offsetting that by having to throw additional resources at it, um where it's like, all right, we're offsetting at best, where it's like this is actually like we're gaining momentum, this is actually a win for the environment, it's a win for our customers,
Mm-hmm.
rather than like I look at it from even what they did with diesel emissions in cars. And it's like, okay, so now our diesel vehicles are putting less particulates into the air, but there's more natural resources and uh, consumables being put into place to build them. And also now they're less efficient. So you're just using more raw fuel in the first place.
So
And
we
it's
had
like, it doesn't make sense.
I had a smash my head against the wall moment when the code came out as R60 for roof assemblies in our climate zone, because about the only thing that most builders know that they can do to get to that is to fill it full of closed cell spray foam, which will get them to R60 and will get them to the energy performance. But the environmental impact of that versus the energy savings, the environmental impact is much higher from installing that closed cell foam than the reduction by the energy savings ever will be.
Yeah. And that's what
And
we have to be
that's the
careful of.
embodied carbon
Right.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to technology our way out of this problem.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a struggle moving forward, even just from like an educational perspective too, where it's like, this is the code we have to hit. How are we going to do that as quick as we can for as little money as we can, and still having consideration for like why are we doing this in the first place? Like
It's
if we're
really
looking to
it's
conserve energy,
it's
which
getting it
essentially,
out there.
yeah, which
That's where people struggle. I went to, there's a local real estate group in my town that puts together like a builders event once a month, and we get together at a brewery and talk about whatever. And a couple of months ago, it was about the new energy code in Connecticut, and it was with 3 building officials from local towns. And we walked in, and everybody kind of convened, and they're like, "We're here to talk about this bullshit energy garbage." And I was like,
Who said
"Oh,
that?
one of the building officials, one of the
Oh
building
my
officials."
God.
So I'm like, okay, I see where this is going to go. And this isn't a pat myself on the back, but as they get talking through this, I start chiming up because I'm an insufferable bastard about that. And I'm going to let you know my opinion. And at the end of it, I had all 3 building officials walk over to me and ask for my card and ask if I do education for their departments, because they had never heard it explained that way.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But
And
that's
that's the unfortunate part is like it's coming
that's the
from
industry.
them. It's like, oh, it's bullshit. Then look at that. 100 people now think it's bullshit.
Validated. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. It's definitely I appreciate what you're doing. I love seeing what you're doing and how involved you are with this and spearheading what you're doing, and it's exciting to see as things progress. I know it will, and I hope that it opens up a ton of doors for you professionally, because you've put the legwork into doing so.
It is, and that's why I keep chasing it. Like it's like a self-fulfilling feedback loop. Like the more we dig in, the more support we find around us to keep pushing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I definitely appreciate your insight. Obviously your time and everything else. Is there anything new and exciting in your world that's going on, business related, personal life related, anything? Same old crap. Kind of how we started. Same old, same old.
Yeah, same old, same old. I'm really excited about an upcoming project that I'm 2 weeks out from having the contract budget together that we're going to do, building a new home for a couple using panelized straw bale construction.
Dang.
That's cool.
Is that a first time for you?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Who
So
makes
we're excited
who
about
makes those
that.
panels?
That's a company out of Maine called Croft.
That's
Oh,
really cool that you
I
guys
had
have
some
like
of those. Yeah.
positioned yourself to get the opportunities to do this stuff.
It's a dream team. Like it's got Christoph Irwin's firm Positive Energy is doing the MEP design on it. Really incredible energy raters. The clients came to us and said, we want a house that's morally defensible. And I was like, wait,
Hold my
what?
beer.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, can I just end this now because this isn't going to go well? But no, it's just trying to really take every opportunity to unpack each product and each assembly and ask the questions like, is this the best we can do?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
That's cool.
what really is a standout to me as well is that like you could easily be doing all of this and just satiating your ego where it's like I get to build all of this cool shit. It's for people who have disposable income and we're creating systems that'll work just one off for these jobs, but like your intent and your goal to be able to develop like use this experience and these customers to develop systems that will then be able to transcend into a market that is not quite as well funded is super admirable and respectable, and like we need more people doing that. So props to you. That's awesome.
Thank you. And it's like I see it happening too. So it's not like a pie in the sky dream. Like 15 years ago, when I first wrapped a building with exterior insulation, everybody at the lumberyard's like, what is this crazy hippie doing with all the foam? But now it's part of our code.
Now you're doing it with hay bales.
Yeah, and wood fiber. So it's like it happens. Like it's just just keep chasing the tail, and
Yeah, well, it's
until I
awesome.
get bored of it.
Then you'll put the tool belt back on, you know?
Yeah, I need to just like be successful enough so I can put the tool belt on and work at like 25% speed on my own house.
I have been saying like that.
Goal.
We keep talking about it. That is what I think defines success in our industry is that
Mm-hmm.
you get to put on the tool belt at whatever percentage that you want.
Mm-hmm.
You get to wake up and decide to put it on. You get to wake up and you decide not to. I think that
try to make myself obsolete in the business is where I'm working towards.
Mm-hmm. Maybe
cool.
move that coffee maker closer than 12 feet and you'd be
No, I need to move it like 20 because then I get my steps in.
Oh, well, you get one of those treadmills. Everyone's got a walking
Yeah.
now. So.
At the desk. Yeah.
Well, Ben, appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know that's not easy.
It was a pleasure.
I didn't realize it was that long ago that we had you on, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, it was.
And we didn't talk about off-site manufacturing at all.
Crazy.
Do we want to?
I don't know. Last time I was on, Johnny gave me a ration for suggesting that off-site manufacturing was a good idea.
Well, things have changed because that's definitely happening more and more nowadays.
We'll get you back. Let's get you. Actually, I was gonna say let's get you back on after you do the straw, I actually just want to come down to Connecticut and see this draw house. So let's do
Come
that.
on down. Hop in with Doug one day because we'll drag him down for a bunch of it.
Oh,
We're
hell
gonna do
yeah.
our best. We're gonna do our best to document it and get it out there through FHB and Green Building Advisor.
That's amazing.
So that people see it. So there's a lot of cool shit happening on that project.
Awesome. And there's an airport there, so I can just fly my jet, right?
Yeah, and then get a limo.
Absolutely. Just don't fly with the other owners of your company, right? That's the lesson.
Yeah, because I want to, emit as much carbon as I can. Ben, always a pleasure, man.
That's the Taylor Swift mode, right?
Yeah. No one's tracking my plan. Ben, appreciate you, dude. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Same.
Yeah, thanks so much.
See ya.
I don't even have to talk during a conversation like that because he has so much knowledge and he's so well versed in this stuff.
He's another one that I like in passing at trade shows, like really quickly see.
Yeah.
But it's always a million other it's like Zach Detmore. Like he's always busy and has a million things going on and then is presenting and running around here and there and never get to actually sit down and speak with him in person. But it's super cool what he's doing. Like I said, I think that so many of us, especially on Instagram and social, get hung up on feeding our own ego and like, hey, we get to do this, we get to do that. But then to be doing that and at the same time developing systems that you can take that knowledge, take that all of those resources and the lessons that you're learning and transition them to the greater market of construction is really cool because you could easily just be like, nah, I'm just going to focus on these 1% type jobs.
Yeah.
So that's really, really neat and exciting to see.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It is. We didn't even get to he travels a ton. He speaks a ton. Obviously, I'm sure his career now, especially being primarily office based, affords him the ability to do that. But good on him for taking that. We'll air quote free time and directly giving it back to the industry and looking to improve the industry because a lot of people would take a much more selfish route.
Yeah, absolutely. That was cool. I didn't realize it was that long ago we had him on.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, head over to moderncraftsman.co. We got some swag. We got some stuff to download. We got I keep saying all the episodes on the website, not all of them, but we're always posting new content. And I don't know. We'll see you next week.
Adios.